Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where I've been working on this contract. I've kind of thrown away the concept of doing it within budget, and this is what I have right now. This is definitely not ideal, but I think it will work. There's a major problem that I'm having though with the fuel crossfeed, and that is the way that the fuel crossfeed works in Juno New Origins is that it is limited to, as far as I can tell, it appears to be limited to somewhere around 250 kilograms per second. And that's just not enough to feed these 4 engines from these side tanks. So you'll notice I removed the engines out here. I was thinking about, to combat that problem, I was thinking about firing the engines that were out here and then burning those to completion and then firing these. And then I was like, what is the point of carrying the mass of 8 engines and the expense of 8 engines when we're going to have 4 anyway? So that's what we're going to do here. Now, I currently have fuel line turned on all of these parts because I was trying to get that to work correctly. It is kind of working correctly, but I'm going to turn it off because I want to do this manually from here. So we're going to do exactly that. Now, you can see putting this out on the pad alone costs more than we're going to get from this contract. To be honest, with the weight of this payload, I don't think we were ever going to make money off of this one. I don't think there's any real way around that. So let's do a quick test flight here, but we're going to need to go around and we're going to need to tell this to fill the tank. And then these tanks out here are going to be draining to the tank. So we're going to have to do this manually, unfortunately. And we're just going to have to go around to each of these and tell them, go ahead and drain right on in. It looks like this is grabbing the hemisphere as well, so that looks fine. We're going to be lifting off on just the SRBs to start with. Oh, and I want to turn off monoprop as well for now. There we go. So you'll notice we don't have a fairing on this, and I dropped that due to cost savings. It does mean we can't have too much thrust to weight, which is part of the reason why we're lifting this with just the solid rocket motors to start with. But what I really want here, and I do want to move this over to 70-degree pitch. There we go. What I really want here is to get to 100 kilometers and enter a coast phase and hopefully drop the side tanks, because that is mass that I don't want to continue to carry for too long. But because of the draw speed here, you can see here, we're drawing from these outer tanks, but it's not fast enough. So that means we're going to have a coastal period. So we're going to have to coast for a little bit. And you can see here our thrust to weight is currently fairly low, but we are bringing up our apoapsis. In fact, our thrust to weight is too low. It wasn't this low previously. It must be because I extended these down. That must be what we've got going on there. But yeah, you can see we're definitely getting fuel crossfeed here. It's just not fast at all. So this is a major limitation, as far as I can tell, in Juno New Origins. It does not appear to have a good solution. It just kind of is what it is, and we got to deal with it. So this means that these sort of liquid boosters like this are going to be a lot tougher to utilize in a reasonable manner. Of course, our thrust to weight is too low right now, and that is indicative of us having a major problem, because we're not able to get our apoapsis up as high as I thought we were. We were getting our apoapsis a lot higher until this flight. In my previous test flights, we were doing much better. So I think that this is just a thrust to weight issue. We probably just need to drop some of the fuel here. The idea is that we want to get our apoapsis up high enough that we can put ourselves in a roughly 100 meter per second orbit, and then we can, if we stop here, I want to see. Okay, the engine is off. Yes, you can see here, we are draining into this tank, but it is slow. So that's noted. And yeah, we're approaching our apoapsis right now. That's understood. So in that case, I'm thinking right now that we just fire our SRBs and our main engines at the same time. That's what I'm thinking right now. So that would solve some problems like lack of gimbaling. So we could do something like that, right? And that's going to give us a lot of thrust to weight. My main concern at this point is that we're going to be running into an issue of taking heat damage without a fairing up here. We might have too much thrust to weight if we do it this way. We will see. So we're going to throttle up, and I'm going to set our, well, we need to turn off our RCS, and we need to go around and we have to manually do this. Otherwise, it's not going to transfer correctly. The way that this is going to work if we don't manually turn this on is it will only pull out of these tanks at the maximum speed that they can pull out, roughly 250 kilograms per second. It will only pull out of those when these engines are firing. That's not the way I want this to work. The way I want it to work is we want to pull out of that as much as possible. Anytime we can, we should be removing from these tanks. So we have to go around and turn all of this on manually. Okay, did I change our heading there? There we go, 60 degrees. Let's go. So we're gonna lift off here, and the question is this going to be too much thrust to weight? If that's the case, we could tune down the thrust of our SRBs. That would be a pretty easy thing to do, and that would drop some of our cost a little bit, but we're still going to be overrunning our cost, no doubt about that. Well, let's give this a quick go, and let's see how that goes. So if we check in on the fuel of these SRBs, we can see they're going to be running out of fuel here pretty soon, and that's not a bad thing, really. We can see that our current apoapsis is about 30. Okay, let's let these drop. They're out of here. So now I'm going to take this over to about, let's go all the way over to a 45-degree pitch. And you can see here, our thrust to weight is a little bit better than it was, and our speed is a little bit better, but I think overall, we're still going to have to shorten these tanks. The real thing that I wanted to check to see there is, were we going to have a heat issue? And it doesn't look like we are. So that's good. Now, if we were to burn this through, we would reach the apoapsis in 60 seconds. I'm wondering right now, our thrust to weight is approaching 1.0. Our thrust to weight is obviously too low, and this is primarily due to this fuel crossfeed issue. However, our thrust to weight is hitting 1 as of right now, and it's going to start going positive, but we're going to see these flickering as the fuel transfer rate isn't enough. So that is definitely a concern. We do need to get our apoapsis up a little bit further, and yeah, there you can see, we're actually only burning one engine partially. We're losing attitude because this is happening kind of unpredictably. We don't have enough fuel transfer coming through here. So if we were to cut this and then run it again, you can see now we're able to burn all of them briefly, but we just don't have enough fuel transfer rate. So a couple of things. First off, we need to tune when we run out of fuel in that main tank. So, I actually wanted to bring that back. So let's undo an exit. We're going to bring up the tanks here a little bit. There's clearly too much mass there, and we're going to need to drop this off a little bit. So I'm going to bring these up to about here was where I had them previously. Okay, that'll save our launch costs a little bit. Doesn't look like we need to tune down our SRBs at all, so that's nice. Let's just lift this. Hang on, we need to redo that. We've got the manual work that we got to do before we lift this. Can't forget about that. Okay. As far as I can tell, there's no way to make this automatically do what I want it to do, which is unfortunate, considering in KSP, you can just put in a fuel line part. So there's that. We're going to be pulling out of these tanks, of course, just like so, and then right up over here, we're going to be pulling in. Okay, now we need to turn off our monoprop, and let's go. So basically, we're just changing when we enter our coast period, right? Because we're going to have to enter a coast period no matter what because of this fuel transfer rate. The fuel transfer rate is bad. I don't like it. I really wish there was a way to tune it or to add more lines. That would be another way to handle that. But unfortunately, there just isn't. Okay, so we're going to be losing our SRBs shortly here. There they go. And they're out of here. Now I'm going to take us over to about a 60-degree pitch this time instead of a 45. I want our apoapsis to be a fair amount higher. And yeah, you can see we're losing surface speed here. This is because our thrust to weight is really low. The way that I would normally handle this is I would have another set of engines out here. But that kind of breaks this in a weird sort of way. So I think this is going to be viable. You can see here we're currently at about 63 kilometers. We're at 0.96 thrust to weight right now. So we're going to start gaining speed there, and we are gaining lateral speed. It's vertical speed that's the problem right now. We're fighting against gravity a little too much, but our apoapsis is currently 70 kilometers. I'm going to drop us down to a pitch of 15 degrees. We're going to continue to burn here, hopefully, until we reach an apoapsis of 100 kilometers. But then we have to enter orbit, right? And that is going to require a coast period, which will require fuel transfer time. And I don't know how much time we're going to have there, given our thrust to weight issue. So this is an 80-kilometer apoapsis right now. We're going to run out of fuel in this main tank fairly soon, so we might have to tune down the amount of fuel in these side tanks. This is working in the exact opposite way that I want it to. I want to be pulling the fuel from out here and not in here, and then ditch these tanks the moment they're empty. Unfortunately, that's just not an option. So we're at 83.2 kilometers for our apoapsis right now. And you can see here, one of our engines burned slightly longer than the others, so that gave us a little bit of thrust offset. And we're having a bit of a hard time moving this back to our designated target, which is understood. So at this point, if we were to coast a while here, we obviously need a lot more lateral speed than what we have. Our orbital velocity is quite low, and our stage delta V here, it's not calculating the fuel that is out here. You can see our stage delta V is just going up at this point, and that's understood. So we're basically at apoapsis right now, and we clearly need additional thrust. So I think that there's no way around it at this point except to put additional boosters in the side stages. Again, this is potentially going to cause us problems, but I'm going to do it. We're going to put it here. I'm not happy about it, but we're going to do it, and that means that I'm going to extend down these guys to about here or so. So the SRBs are going to run slightly longer, and I do want to split the SRBs again into their own stage. So we're going to put a stage here. The Phoenix Solid boosters are going to go here. I have big concerns about thrust to weight issues and heating issues if we burn this as is. So I was hoping to save some money there, but alas, that's not going to be a thing. This is getting more and more expensive as we work through this, and we're just going to have to deal with it. Okay, so at this point, and this is all because our fuel transfer isn't working the way I want it to. Just because we are heavily, heavily, heavily limited on its throughput. Like, extraordinarily limited on its throughput. Okay, so we're going to have to lift this off with just the SRBs for now, and that is absolutely fine. We're going to kick in the liquid fuel boosters when the SRBs run out. And the SRBs are going to burn slightly longer than they did before. We'll generate some amount of speed here, but it's not going to be nearly enough to get us into orbit, obviously. And I do want to be moving us over to that 70-degree marker for right now. But yeah, I've definitely learned a lot about how the fuel transfer in this game works, and it's not good news. Not good news at all there. Okay, SRBs are going to be burnt out about now. Okay, let's get rid of those. Beautiful. So at this point, you can see that the external boosters are definitely burning longer. We do have a issue here. This is going to probably cause that. And that's easy enough to fix. That does mean we'll have a little bit more fuel here. Because what we're going to have to do to fix this, of course, is we're going to have to move our center boosters down a bit. And that's absolutely fine. We don't mind that. So we're going to bring that down. We're going to place this approximately... Well, actually, that's going to have to go about here. So that'll give us a little bit more weight. That, of course, also means that our takeoff costs are going to be a little higher. I'm putting on my blinders. I'm ignoring the price. We're losing so much money on this. This is a scam. Seriously, though, lifting 500 tons to this orbit on 100 million, I'm sure it's probably possible, but it would require a ridiculous amount of engineering to actually pull that off. Okay, let's put ourselves at about 70 degrees, get the RCS off. While we're on the SRBs, I'm going to be doing the fuel transfer here, because we absolutely do want to make sure that this fuel transfer is happening. Okay, there we go. So the SRBs are going to be burned out shortly here. This is going to give us a lot more thrust to weight, which is absolutely necessary at this point. Okay, and also keep in mind our timing is very bad here. We don't necessarily want this to be firing right now. Or rather, we don't want to be launching this right now. These are just test launches. So you can see here, we're draining fuel at slightly higher rates in the external tanks. That is good. But I would really like there to be a lot more fuel transfer going on here. Like a whole lot. I'm going to drop this down to about a 30-degree pitch here. And our apoapsis is definitely going up here. So that's noted. I'm looking at our stage DV here. That looks pretty good, actually. Okay, so we're now at about 50-kilometer apoapsis, and we can just continue to burn here for a little bit, watching that orbital velocity go up. 60-kilometer apoapsis. Looking at our overall fuel amounts, they seem reasonable-ish. So now we're at about a 70-kilometer apoapsis. And I would like to drop our pitch down to about 10 degrees right now. We still want to be getting a little bit of altitude. And I'm wondering how much fuel we're going to have left over in the center tank after our coast period. Okay, so our altitude is looking good. I want to be getting horizontal speed only right now. There we go. We still have drag, so we're still losing some to drag. So that's a concern, but this tank up here actually has a fair amount of DV in it. So as long as we get this to orbit, we should be fine. Okay, so this is 90-kilometer apoapsis. And 95. And that's 100. Shutting down the engines. We overshot slightly, and we're going to pull what fuel remains out of these tanks, and then we're going to ditch the tanks. And then we'll just see what's left in here. We should have ditched these tanks a while ago. We're carrying a lot of dead weight that we should not be carrying right now, but with the fuel transfer speed, there's nothing we can do about that. This just is. So we're going to bring this up to around 20% fuel remaining here. Yeah, so that indicates that we should have dropped these tanks so long ago. So long ago. Alas, nothing we can do about it. We're just going to have to jettison these tanks now. And we're going to have to go with what we've got. So we've got 613 meters per second left here. So at this point, what we want to do, of course, is we want to plan a burn at the apoapsis. And the question is, just how much DV is it going to take us to get into orbit here? So that is going to take virtually what we've got left here, 683, 613. It's going to be very, very similar. Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and do that. We'll get aligned for that burn. And obviously we don't have solar panels on here right now, so that is a bit of a concern as well. Although our battery is at 100. Maybe there's a solar panel up here. I don't know. Our battery is definitely at 100. So that's understood. We're going to burn our remaining center course fuel here, although we should have more fuel than this if the fuel crossfeed was fast enough. Unfortunately, it just isn't. And we're going to have to work a bit on this at this point, right? So we need to get these last little bit of DV in here. This is going to be... Yeah, this is currently saying not recommended. That's understood, because our thrust to weight is wildly different on this stage. But you can see here we've got about 1 kilometer per second in this stage, which once we're in orbit is enough to do what we need to do. But it's a very, very long burn time. So that is understood. We're going to need to bring our periapsis up here, and we might have to do a little bit of correction with a radial direction. I'm not sure if we're going to need radial in or radial out at this point. We'll get there. So I'm just keeping an eye on the periapsis here. Eventually our apoapsis is going to start going up instead because we have some issues with our timing. And when that happens, that's when we want to investigate a radial direction. For now, this is looking reasonable. We're virtually at orbital velocity right now, and we would be there if we were able to more efficiently stage our side stages. But alas, we were not. So we're sitting at about a 30-kilometer periapsis right now. And I do believe that we're going to be able eventually to get this thing into orbit. Well, with this particular launch. So I'm keeping an eye on this apoapsis. It will start going up shortly. We're at a 40-kilometer periapsis right now. And I'm thinking we probably are going to want... Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to want radial in or out. We'll experiment with that. But for now, we're up to a 50-kilometer periapsis, so that's looking good. And you can see the stage burn time here. Yeah, it's going to take a very long time. This thing is ridiculously heavy. The other one we're going to be able to do much more easily. So that's good. It's a way lighter payload. Okay, so this is a 60-kilometer periapsis right now. All we got to do is get it up to 80, and we're in orbit. From there, we can take our time. And we're definitely going to get there. We are 100% going to get there. So this is now a 70-kilometer periapsis. 73, 74. We're losing efficiency here. 76, and there you can see the apoapsis beginning to go up. Yeah, we're definitely losing efficiency, but look at that. 80-kilometer periapsis. I like it. We don't need to get this perfectly circular. This proves the point, which is that this design can get us there. Maybe not efficiently, but it does do the trick. I'm just going to take this up to a 90-kilometer periapsis, I think, but it's academic at this point. It is completely academic. So this is fine. We now know for a fact that this can do it. The major question is, how can we improve that fuel transfer? And based on my research, you can't. It just is. There's no way to change that. Apparently you can bug it by having additional interstages, but I'm not sure how you'd connect it to both parts. It's kind of strange. But regardless, this will do the trick at a cost of more than triple what we're going to get for this. So there's that. You can see here we've got 991 meters per second at this point. We're in orbit. It would get us to where we were needing to go. The thrust to weight is incredibly, incredibly low on it, but we're not surprised about that. So, that proves a point. Now, we could definitely do this if we wanted to blow up the budget, we could do this in a much smarter way. When I started this design, I was still trying to remain in budget. So I may come back in the next episode with a completely different design that is cheaper than this. and still capable of getting there, but not targeting that $100 million budget, right? I think that's out of reach for this payload, at least with our current technology. So with that in mind, it is time to put a cut in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to launch this thing. We're going to get this mission done. I want to be done with this one. We're probably just going to launch this as it is, to be honest, and just eat the cost. It's $200 million. That's not that big of a deal. So we'll eat that cost, and then we'll try to hit the 100 million target on the next launch, which is going to be a far, far lighter payload. That'll be way simpler. No doubt about that. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Andy McGar, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Hiro Marutsu, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.